Howdy folks, your average Joe back here to do part 3 of your emergency fishing kit, along with a little bit of survival advice and gear. And I got my cup of Joe coffee for my survival kit. In episode 1, or part 1, I mentioned a compass and everything, and one thing I did forget to mention, and I did put it in my comments, but I wanted to highlight a little bit on it, was GPSs. If you've got a GPS, if it's a standalone GPS, those do work pretty good. But what happens if the satellites are down? It's pointless to you. If you've got it as part of your phone, you need to make sure you have cell phone coverage. There's no cell phone reception or a tower in the area, that's pointless too. That's why I mentioned the compass and the maps and get to know the area, the topographical maps. Because like I said, your GPS doesn't do you any good in those couple situations. Anyway, so back to your emergency fishing kit. I wanted to include a couple things that I put together a little emergency fishing kit, and kind of give you an idea how to use it. I mentioned before shoelaces. I should say bootlaces. The reason why I say bootlaces over shoelaces is bootlaces have a tendency to be round rather than flat. And I just think the round ones work a little better for tying. In a lot of situations, I think it'd just be a little better. And make sure you get a set that is long enough. Keep them as in your emergency survival kit. In case you need extra laces, you've got them, but you can also use them for a lot of other things. For one, you can use them as a lanyard. And that's a lot stronger than anything you're going to buy. Trust me, I looked around over the past few days. A lot stronger than anything you're going to buy as far as a lanyard. I've got 2 of these. Now, the reason I wanted to take a lanyard is because I put together that. I talked about using a dowel and putting your fishing string on a dowel. And so I did that. And I talked about using this. I put eyelets on the end of it. The reason I did that, there you go. If you're clumsy, I have a tendency to be more clumsy now that I'm older. Wrap that around your wrist. If you drop it, the fish doesn't pull it out in the lake and you lose it forever. At least you got that. Now, granted, if you drop it, the string will pull off the end, but hopefully you can get it picked, With that, you're not going to drop it very far. You're going to get a hold of it again before it goes too far. Now, I talked about when the string is, when the fish is on and it's pulling on it, how you can adjust your drag. You can just kind of hold it like that. I used a Lysol can. Now I've got the real thing. You can use it like that. Make sure you attach your lanyard with something that's got a spindle. A swivel, I should say. That way it can twist, won't wrap. Because if you can't twist, if you hook that right, if you tie straight to the eyelet on the end there, it's going to wrap around your wrist rather than spinning. Then you got a problem. And anyway, another thing you can do with the lanyard, you can do 2 of these clamps. I'll show you that a little closer. And you can grab that, open that up, hook that right to the end there. Okay. Now you've got it set up like that. Now, why do you want to do that? Well, if you're lazy, you want to take a nap, you can lay that on the ground, take your survival knife, stab that in the ground or a stick, wrap that around it, or wrap that around a tree. Fish isn't going to take it out. Now keep in mind, also, if you've got that wrapped up like that, that it's not going to spin. So if a big fish grabs your line, starts to drag it, it's only going to go so far. Now, if you want to just, of course, it's only going to go so far. And if it's a big fish, that's 8-pound test I put on there. It's going to snap your line if he's bigger than 8 pounds and has a run. So You can do that, but be ready to pull it off pretty quick. You can do it this way and just hook your lanyard about around something like that. It'll pull the line off the end, and hopefully you can get to it before it takes all your line out. I would recommend that, you know, doing it this way rather than doing the double hook like that, but, you know, I suppose that's your own discrepancy. Something else I talked about doing is, or actually I didn't talk about doing, something I use with a regular pole, little bell. If I'm fishing off the bottom, hook that into the end of your pole. When a fish hits your bait, tugs on the line, rings that little bell. So if you're sitting there taking a nap or fishing at nighttime, you hear that thing bite. How would you do that with this? You know, like I said, you hook that to the end of the pole. If you're using that, here's what I would do. Put that right there. If that's laying on the ground, that fish pulls on your line, it's gonna flip that bell over and bang it. And you got a hit. Just kind of a little alert, not very heavy. I got it in my little tackle box. So how are you gonna use this? Well, like I talked about before when I was using the Lysol can, you hook your bait up to that and position it this way, and then you throw your hook out and it'll slide right off the end of that. Turn it this way, sit for it, wait for it. And you can use that like that, hold it like that, and then you're good to go. If that fish grabs and pulls on it, like I said, you use that, hold it tighter if you want to put more drag on it, loosen it up if you want to loosen up the drag, but you can let the fish run that way. And then when he gets tired, you simply start wrapping the line around like that. Pull a little bit at a time, wrap it around. Now the other advantage to like this, to using something like that, is if you're just trying to hold the string, you don't got a lot of grip there. I mean, a big fish can pull a lot out of there, but you're using that and using that to wrap it up, and you got a pretty good grip there. So, what do you use on the end of that? Talked about a couple different things that you can use. Two basic ways you can fish with something like this, and like I talked about, lures and jigs are just kind of impossible to use without a fishing pole if you're using something like this. The other thing I talked about, weight in compact. You're doing an emergency fishing kit, so you want something lightweight. Trust me, that's not very heavy, and you can fit that in a pack pretty easily. So I talked about bait fishing. That's your most effective way to fish. Rather than lures or jigs, you just can't use them very practically with something like this. But bait, yes, definitely. Like I said, you throw it out there. You can kind of swing it around like this and launch it that way, or you can just plain throw it out. So, how are you going to set up your hook and your bait? How are you going to do something like that? So I've got a snap and a snap swivel on the end of this. This allows it to twist, and so you've got some, so it won't twist up your line. Your bait or your whatever, if it's twisting around as you're dragging it in, it won't twist up your line as bad. This allows your line not to tangle up. So what do you hook on the end of this? Well, a couple things you can hook on there, a couple ways you can do that. Now, if you're using, I talked about fishing off the top with a bobber or fishing off the bottom with a weight. So first of all, let's talk about fishing off the top. So what I did, and I kind of showed you a little bit of this in a previous video, is I've got one hook right there with a little bit of leader already attached to it from the factory, and then I attached another piece of leader onto it, about 2.5 feet maybe. Sorry, I'm not sure how that works out in metric, but anyway, so I did something like that, and then You hook that to the snap swivel. Easier said than done. You just hook it to the snap swivel. That's easy. There we go. Wearing the glasses, I still can't even see. Anyway, then you use a bobber. What I mentioned hooking it up below the swivel, but actually, I like hooking up above. A lot of times I hook it right to the swivel. The reason I do that is it doesn't weaken your line if you hook it right to the swivel rather than right to the line. And it's got hooks at both ends, so a lot of people will hook it on the line. I guess I should hold it up so you can see it. Like that. And up at the top too. So that hangs like that. You got your snap swivel down below it, and then you got your leader and your hook. And you can, like I said, for bait, you can use night crawlers, worms, grubs, cheese, bread, corn, a lot of different things you can hook on there, power bait, all kinds of different salmon eggs. And that is probably your most effective. Now, I like I said, night crawlers, worms, that's just your most effective right there. Right on the top of the lake, that bounces on the top of the lake. When it gets hit, that thing bobs up and down, hence bobber. You got a fish, pull it in, okay? So, now, like I said, I'm not too crazy about hooking the bobber straight to the line. You can just clip it right to the swivel, on the loop right on the top of the swivel, and it's going to stay secure. I, to this day, have never had a bobber come off when I've hooked it, even when I've only hooked it with one side of the bobber. Of course, now that I mention that, it'll happen to me. Anyway, so you can do that, and that's fishing off the top. So fishing off the bottom, what can you do with that? There's a little different setup. Now, I'm going to show you just the one hook method. You'd be using the same leader, same kind of bait, and put it on the bottom. But I'm going to show you a little different setup here. Now this, you'll still be using, like I said, that leader, but you're fishing off the bottom. So what do you want to do when you fish off the bottom? Well, you have to hook up weight to it. So how do you do that? I'll show you. Sorry, I should have been a little more prepared here. So I'm taking the swivel off. And I guess I should have showed you how I hooked up the swivel, which I will. Okay. So I mentioned an egg sinker, although I used a much larger one in the previous video. It's got a hole down the middle. Why does it got a hole down the middle? So you can slide your line right down there. Now what's the advantage to this? I mentioned that a little bit before, but I will mention again. So you put your line. Of course, you can't see. Anyway, so you put your line through there. Okay. Now I pre-tied a knot here in my fishing string. Okay. I don't know why you can see that against my face, but anyway. And you slide that through. Except I missed. The older I get, the harder it is to do this stuff because I don't see as good. Of course, this is going to take me, 10 minutes to do this. Like I said, I should have done this previously. There we go. Got it. So you slide your loop through there on your pre-tied knot. Piece of cake, doesn't take you very long if you got better eyes than me. And then you slip. So you slip that through the loop, through the eyelet there, and then you tuck that back through. So it pulls tight like that. Okay. Then you got your egg sinker there. And then use the same leader and the same hook you were using with your bobber setup. And this time you're fishing off the bottom, like I said. Egg sinker, your swivel. The egg sinker goes above the swivel, okay? And I just lost my leader. Thought I had that on there. Did not. There we go. Okay. So you got your egg sinker, your swivel, your leader, hook. Put your bait on there. When a fish hits on this is laying on the bottom of the lake, just like that. That's just laying there, okay? When a fish pulls on that bait, pulls the line right through it. You feel the hit. So when you're sitting on the bank and you're bottom fishing, you don't have a bobber to watch. So how do you know when you're getting a hit? Well, if you're using a pole, you can set it up so the pole is kind of at a right angle to the line, and then you can see the tip of your pole just twitch a little bit. That's when you know you got a hit. And when you use that bell, you hook that to it, and it jingles the bell, okay? But if you're not using a pole, what do? Well, you wrap that right around your finger. You'll feel the tug. You leave that laying on the bank. You can put your little pole right on the eyelet there. You'll flip that over and ring the bell. Okay? That's one of those basic two ways. You can lay on the bank, wrap that around your finger, take a nap, because you're old. Anyway, so that's one way to fish off the bottom with bait. Okay? So, what other setup can you do? Okay, I'm just going to leave that egg sinker on just so I don't have to explain it, or so I don't have to remove it real quick. I'm just showing you this for demonstrations. So what's another way? Well, I got another setup. This is a little more productive. I like this setup a little bit more. But if they're hitting real light, that setup I just showed you works pretty good because, like I said, it doesn't move the bait at all, or it doesn't count on moving your weight at all. And you can feel the hit going through that. I mean, it pulls right through that weight, and you can feel the hit, no problem. Okay? So this is a little different. This is a different setup. The thing I like about, now here's what I did with this. Okay, so here's the beginning of my leader that I hook to the swivel, to the snap swivel, and just dropped it. I'm going to snap that close so I don't drop it again. Anyway, so there's your snap swivel. You got your leader, Look, there's another line hooked in there. So what's going on with that? So I've done a blood knot there and hung a hook off of it. Still going. Did another one, and there's your bait, or there's your weight, okay? This is a little different type of weight. I like that. You can see that. Now, what's the advantage to this setup? The advantage I like to this setup, okay? So this side of the leader is going up to you. And then there's your hooks, and then your weight. So what does that do for you? What it does for you is if a fish grabs either one of those hooks, notice 2 hooks. First of all, you just doubled your chances of getting a hit. You put bait on both of those, you got 2 hooks, twice as many chances of getting a fish, okay? That's a major advantage to that. You've got your weight down below the hooks, okay? What's the advantage to that? When a fish tugs on one of them hooks, it doesn't have to move the weight for you to feel the hit on this end because the weight's this side, okay? Another advantage to this is if you're up on the bank, this is down in the water, you've thrown this out, that's sitting on the bottom, okay? You're up on the side. What's that done? Lifts those up off a little bit, okay? There's even the slightest little current, or you're using bait that floats a little bit, it doesn't sit on the bottom. So that's kind of handy there too. When you're down in the bottom, the disadvantage to fishing with bait off the bottom is you can get snagged. You can get hung up on stuff. That can get hooked on a rock. That can get hooked on weeds, whatever down there. With this being up a little bit, it doesn't have a tendency to sit in the weeds or the rocks as much, especially if you're at quite an angle, you're fishing deep. You know, if it's deep water where you're at, it doesn't sit on the, it's not going to get snagged as easy, okay? If it does get snagged with this setup, if your weight gets caught in the rocks and snaps off, you still got your hooks, okay? So that's an advantage. If one of these hooks gets snagged, if it's the lower one, which more likely it will get snagged because it's lower, then you still got this one, okay? So you've saved one hook. You've got to, you can do another leader, tie up another leader if you lose your weight or one hook. The other thing I do, my main string, I'm using 8-pound test. It's rated at 8 pounds tension. So basically a fish can pull 8 pounds worth and it's not going to break, okay? Below that, when I did the leader, I used 6-pound test. Now, why do I do that? The reason I do that is because if you're snagged or a big fish hooks in and he breaks your line, I would rather have the weak spot below that swivel, down here. The reason for that, if you're going to break anything, then it's going to happen below the swivel, okay? If it breaks, it could break anywhere along there. Like I said, it could break at the weight, that could, or you get snagged. You lose that, you still got your hooks left, okay? So if a fish grabs your lower hook, pulls it, snaps that off, you still got that, okay? Or if he grabs the other hook and he snaps that, you still got all that left. You have not lost all your line. You have not lost, if you're using the same pound test for your leader and your main line, who knows, your weak spot might be right up next to your reel or your spool or your block of wood, whatever you're using, okay? So, that could happen. So you could lose all that line, but if you're using 6-pound test for your leader, it's going to break there first, and you've saved all your line, okay? So that's why I do that. Let's see, what else have I talked about? Bait, fishing off the bottom with hooks, and the 2 different setups for fishing off the bottom with the bobber. Putting together a fishing kit. I found this. Just a little box to keep all your stuff. Okay. You get your little line straightener or line stripper or straightener, whatever you want to call that. Talked about how to use that before. Got your little bells in there. Got extra bobbers. I've got weights. I did mention the slip shots, which I've got here. I did show how to use those a little bit in the previous video. The disadvantage of these is the fish has got to pull the string, or got to pull the weight for you to feel the hit. Not so much a disadvantage when you're using something this small for a weight. By the way, those egg weights. So now I got everything tangled up here. Anyway, you know the ones that you can slide the line through? Another advantage of those, you can put two of them on in conjunction with each other, so you got a little more weight, a little more castability, okay? The nice thing about using heavier weight, it's easier to cast it out. You got more weight to throw out there. Plus, when it's sitting on the bottom of the lake, I mentioned tight lines. Whether you're bobber fishing or whether you're fishing off the bottom with a weight, you want to keep your line somewhat snug. It's kind of tricky to do when you're fishing with a bobber off top of the lake, but you want to take up that slack. When you're fishing off the bottom, you want to take in pretty much all the slack, okay? You don't want any slack in there. You want a somewhat tight line, you know what I'm saying? So when you're using a small amount of weight, you can't put as much tension on there. But it also won't have a tendency to snag as easy because it doesn't fall down low as easy. Down in the rocks as easy. But when you've got more weight, you can pull a little tighter because you're pulling against the weight. Like I said, you can use two of those weights in conjunction. You can also use two of those other ones at the bottom of your, the other leader I showed you with the two hooks. You can use two of those weights on that to give you a little more weight. The more weight you have, the more tension you can pull because you're pulling against more weight. Rather than just a little bit of weight, you can't pull a lot of tension on it. So there's a little advantage to fishing with more weight. But we are talking about an emergency fishing kit, so you don't want a lot of weight in your emergency fishing kit. That's why I pick some pretty small stuff. So also if you put two weights on there and you get snagged, you've just lost both your weights. So you're losing twice as many. So that's something to kind of toy around and think about when you're fishing off the bottom especially. Anyway, I'm sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked there. I was talking about the little box that I found. I'm going to, I can't quite do that. Anyway, so I'll kind of show you this way. Anyway, so that's the little box I've got. Got weights in there. I've got the snap swivel. I can put the snap swivels. I got the bobbers. And now the hooks won't fit in there. And the hooks won't fit in there. Also, your wooden reel, that won't fit in there either. But you got your weights, you got your snap swivels, and you've got your bobbers in there. But that's all and I'd put also the line stripper in there too. So what are you going to do with your other stuff? They're too big to fit in there. Okay. So I found that. Little cinch bag. You can put your little, that doesn't weigh anything. You can put your wooden dowel reel, whatever you want to call it, in there. You can put your fish hooks right there. Okay. So that works. Cinch that up. Got a pretty good carrying bag there. That came with another little bag. You can put little miscellaneous stuff in there if you want to. Extra weights, extra fishing string if you want to fit in there. But we are talking emergency survival kit, so you don't want a lot of weight in there. So when you're not using your fishing kit, what do? How do you keep that wrapped up so it doesn't come unraveled and make a mess just like I have already made? What do? Okay. How do you keep that attached so it doesn't unravel, okay? Well, what I did, I got these little Velcro straps. Slide that over. Cinch that up. Pull it over. Okay, to hold that in place. Guess what? Doesn't work very well. I mean, it's doing the job. It is reusable. So, you know, you can do that. Another thing you do, a little bit of tape. Okay. You can also have your leave your snap swivel attached to it. Hook it to the eyelet. It'll keep it somewhat snug. You know, if you got it in the bag there in your cinch bag, it's not going to come unraveled very much. So, you know, that's what you can do to tend to it. So, that's pretty much it for today. I hope you got a lot out of this. Sorry, it took me a little longer to make this video than I thought because I wasn't real prepared. I'm all tangled up right now anyway, so I got to unwrap that. Anyway, let's see here. I'm thinking about doing a video where you're utilizing this stuff. Maybe a part 4. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Tight lines to you. Have a good day.